I want to talk about what you do in your summer breaks, and
Oh
some of the
no.
non-SNL stuff that you've worked on over the years with theater and schools. And you want to talk about the Leo projects first, or
Yeah, sure. I guess. Yeah, when I started out, there was a lot of free time. You know, extra. I needed to make more money, and I also, wanted to do more work other than just SNL. So, I spent a lot of time working with Leo. Um, Early on, I used to build all his models and do what I could for him, do some drawings for him. So he brought me under his wing, and I worked on. What did he do? He did. God, a lot of projects, but
you
first
were
I
talking
can
about
think
the
of
Craig Ferguson
Craig
before.
Ferguson we worked on. I helped him on Craig Ferguson. He did the Tonight Show with Jay Leno, and then I participated in some revisions to the Jay Leno studio out in California and the changes there that he made. Um,
What do you remember specifically? What your changes were?
I don't. I really
Okay.
don't. I remember I did draftings for him and some model building for him. Craig Ferguson, we did completely from scratch, so I did
Mm.
the drawings and the model for him. Um, we did a few other Access Hollywood. He designed over, and I remember building a huge model for that. Saying, "Can I get the model back?" We shipped it out. They never did the project. They never built it, and I never got the model back. But the model came out really cool, and what else? We did Roseanne had a show. I think, yeah, I worked on that with him. And we did a lot of work at the Irish Rep too.
Mm.
The Irish Rep, uh, that's what the model here is, that we did Long Day's Journey into Night. But he would took me under his wing, and we were like co-designers on a bunch of their productions. And we actually branched off and did in the basement. They have a little basement theater, and we did some children's theater there, which was fun. We did a couple puppet shows with Bob Flanagan. One was an original, Rafferty Rescues the Moon. It was a lot of fun, and and then we did the Happy Prince was another one that we did a couple of shows down there. That was fun and interesting, and that was kind of the theater stuff. And then I spent a considerable amount of time working for Eugene. Um,
Yeah, can you talk about what was your involvement with the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon with that
yeah,
set?
I worked on that set. I worked on. I think I did 7 years alongside Eugene. That was a lot of work. I would go up to Rhode Island, and basically whatever project he was on, I would stay at his place. And he has a cool studio out in back. It's an old carriage house. He got an old house in Providence, Rhode Island. And oh my God, we would glue all day, glue stuff. I remember the glue used to drive me crazy. I didn't realize why. Every time I went up there, I used to get all congested. I said, "What's going on?" But the glue he uses used to give me this allergic reaction. I said, "Eugene, I can't use that glue anymore. The jet glue, it's like has an activator, and I'd spray it and breathe it in. It was terrible for you." He said, I can't smell anything anymore." I said, "Really?" He said, "No, for years." "Well, why did you stop using this stuff?" But I think it's the glue. But he did a lot of stuff, a lot of theater up there, a lot of theater in the city, and I did a lot with him. He had Ricky Lake. I worked on the Ricky Lake show with
Mm.
him. We did, all of his theater projects. He had other designers too that would work with him. And
Susical.
Seussical, we did the Broadway show. That was quite an experience. That was, you know, definitely an
Was
experience.
that your first Broadway show?
Yeah, and last. Yeah, so far.
Mm.
But yes, it was. Well, I worked on Ragtime with him too, but not the original Broadway. Um, when you do a Broadway show, you're generally considered, or at least contracted to be considered for first refusal for other productions. So he did a few road shows, or at least another road show or two. And then the first non-equity road show was when I first started working with him. And he said, "Well, you're gonna have to do that." And I said, "Oh, okay, And I did that non-equity. That was an experience because I had to travel down to. That was during 9/11. I was down in Savannah, Georgia for that, and yeah, it was supposed to be opening night. It was 9/11, and they
Wow.
canceled the show. But it was quite an experience because you kind of live alongside these people. It reminded me of what it would be like if I took the the National Players Tour. These were all these young kids that were basically auditioned and cast to be in Ragtime Roadshow, and they were ready. I thought it was amazing. You know, they have the little bus, and they bring all their luggage, and they basically travel around with the show from town to town to town to town, and redo the show. And I remember every show, even the technical people said to me, like, yeah, every show is different because certain theaters don't fit this and don't fit that. And they said, the thing with Ragtime is as long as we get the car in, everybody loves the show. You know, they had the little car drives out during the show. And they said, no, you got to get all this scenery's got to be in as many shows as possible. But that was great. Stafford Arima, I worked with on that. He was the director for that, and a good friend of mine, but I met him through that. And yeah, so we did many other productions over the course of those 7 years.
I'm curious about the piece of the skyline from the Fallon show. Did you
Oh
build
yeah,
that?
so
The
for
wood?
Jimmy Fallon,
Yeah.
for late night, that was Tonight Show.
Mm-hmm.
So the Tonight Show, I did all the buildings behind Jimmy, all the little wood buildings.
What did Eugene design it and you built it, or did you design?
Well, again, I stole the architecture from the city, but
Yeah.
I researched. You know, basically the concept and idea was there. I remember Eugene brought me a bunch of little buildings. They were kind of fun. I still have them in a box downstairs. They were almost like wood brio kind of things for a train set or something. But he had these little wood buildings, and they were very simplified.
Yeah. Why wood?
Well, because I think the texture of the show, he wanted it to be all very wood because it was a little more
Like a den.
prestigious. Well, I think he felt it was a little bit of a better. A lot of the late night shows are very, I don't know, flash and lights, and I think it gave it a very, which it did in many ways. It gave him a little warmer, kind of more. I don't want to say professional, but you know, a little more prestigious kind of look.
Is it just a given that all the late night shows have a cityscape in them somewhere? Like, is that just
Well,
the
it's
skyline?
interesting you say. I don't know. I think that's what's so interesting. I remember when I first started doing design work and seeing how the Letterman, Kathy Ankers, who's, God rest her soul, is no longer with us, but she did the design work for Letterman for years. And one of her last really beautiful sets was that models behind Letterman with all the skies. I don't know if you remember it. It has the Brooklyn Bridge, and they were beautiful, really almost realistic. And I think if you look back at the history of, you know, the talk shows and those late night shows, you know, it really depended, but it was often just an attempt to locate the people, show where you are, and what better way than. So I think it was like an instinctive approach for most designers. But I don't know if they all have it, but a lot of them do because it marks where you are. That's why, you know, with Ferguson, we did the skyline out in, you know, California. So it was a way to kind of let people know where you are. And it's not a rule, but people play it safe. I think there's always that observation that I remember talking with several people about, but it's always so strange, isn't it, that the talk show hosts are always on the right and all the guests are always on the left. Now, I don't know if it's you know, there may be an exception to the rule, but I can't think of one. You know, you look back, so I think sometimes, you know, what works, and there's not really, you know, just like SNL, you know, don't question what works. You know, something. If you put the host on the right or the left, and depending on what you're talking about, camera left, and the guests on the right, you know, people might be disoriented. But it seems like Carson and all of them had
all of them.
Yes, it was almost always the desk was camera right and the host comes camera left, right? Can you think of any show that wasn't?
Steve Allen was the same, right?
James Corden is on the left.
Oh,
Is he?
Yeah.
Okay.
See?
But
There's
he's
one.
British. Everything's on the left.
Yes, that's because he drives on the wrong side of the road.
Um,
Well, it could be, but generally, you know what I mean. So there's this tradition
Yeah.
of, you know, that's funny. I'll have to. Yeah, I guess you're right.
What of all the projects that you've worked on, because you've done high school musicals, you did the Broadway, you've done a lot of television now, is there a realm that you're happiest in, that you feel your skills excel at more?
Summer vacation count?
Yes.
No.
But you don't take vacation, do you? Because you work, built this
Well, we're
house
almost
out?
always on vacation every couple of weeks, so we get the week break here and there. But yes, well, if you track some of my work, it's not that early on I spent a lot of time. I must have done 10 or 11 years with Marymount School, which is the K through 12 private all-girls school in Manhattan. They've been really good to me. There's a team of sisters, Rita and Laura Pietropinto, and they are like the best. I started because a friend of mine that was a page with me was doing. He was a teacher, and he taught drama there, and he would do the summer drama camp. And he asked me one year, "Can you come help me? I know you do this professionally, but we're doing Wizard of Oz, and I need help with the drop and with the scenery. It's just kids, and it's easy. It doesn't have to be anything special. This is, I don't know what to do for the set. And I said, sure. So I came, and I was there for at least probably 10, 12 years. And they'd call me. In the summer, they'd have two groups. They were little munchkins, little kids, and they'd do like, two shows, the little kids and the older kids, and they just were, I loved them, and they loved me too, and it was just, there's something really fulfilling about doing work with the kids and with in education. So it's not just that the little kids, which the camp was, but the next year during the school year, they had the high school kids doing a play. And I think maybe we did Guys and Dolls or something the first year, and then West Side Story the second year. And they kind of do the traditional musicals, but those theater roots are really fun. And I think the best part is when the little kids see you make something like out of foam core, and they're like, "Wow, that's cool. How'd you do that?" And I think that's really fulfilling because, we could make an exploding whale in a rotating wall at SNL, but nobody really comes over and says, "Hey, that's cool. Wow, thanks. How'd you do it?" The kids, I made a piano out of foam core for Music Man, and they were blown away. They just couldn't believe it was like a real piano looking with all the keys and it was fun. But there's something about working with, education that is, as I said, it's common in my family, but that was very fulfilling. And even when I did so Marymount, that's what some of these models are from. That was Seussical, my nephew's senior production at my former high school. And basically you go in with nothing, and the kids help you build everything. And some of it's frustrating because I'm a little spoiled with this, and now, we just draw it and say, make this, and it comes out perfect. But with the kids, you got to teach everything from carpentry to painting to everything, in which I'm not necessarily the best at it all, but I get by. So, we did Seussical is a good example. Into the Woods was from Marymount. And then I started doing productions locally because I moved here and still keep the apartment. But when I'm here, we do the Trumbull Youth in the summer. So I've done a bunch of those productions. That's Footloose, and we did, what else did we do? Mary Poppins. Actually, we never did that production, but I didn't. But I pitched him this idea, and it's just way too expensive.
And when you said you build the models and stuff for Eugene, like, do most designers work this way with the model, or is this
No,
particularly
my process is, I'm sure everyone works differently, but my process is always model first. That's why I put all these out, because, to me, it's the easiest way to communicate to people what I want to do. And I find that they react much better to a model than they react to a drawing. The drawing, some people think they know what they're seeing, but they don't always. And the model seems much more clear to me, where you can take a little piece. That's why these are like fun. Here's like, this is the window unit, okay? It's going to open, and this is how it works. And I think people respond better to that than just a pencil drawing or drafting.
How long did it take you to, say, do the Grand Central model?
I don't know. That's a tough question.
I mean, days, weeks, months? 1 hour?
It didn't take that long. But I had all kinds of, the reason why this might have, if you add up all the other time, the extra pieces and how many times I built it, yeah, it took a while. But once I did some of them, like you can see the detail in that. It's just those are just line drawings. But in the one I did because I wanted to present it to Lorne and to the show, the windows are cut out and all the little windows are put in, and all those windows are all popped out in the back just to show how they work. But it depends on the level of detail. Even if you look at this took a lot of work to cut all the little X's out and the details in the girders. But or this set, you know, all the little wood pieces, you know, that's a lot of cutting. But if you look at that Grand Central, you'll see it's kind of a quick model. It was very quick because there's no details really cut into all the mullion stuff, but it gives me that gesture. And then I took it and I did a more detail to this and a more detail to that. And, you know, the more detail you put in it, the more I think you can communicate.
I know you said all four of you on SNL, you like to draft by hand. You build the models, but do you ever use technology in designing?
Never.
Never? Would you ever want...
Of course you use some, but the technology comes in the shop sometimes more than on the drafting table. I find it very important to be able to, you know, do it by hand. I think we've had this discussion of, you know, bringing computers in or learning to draft on the computer. This is how most people draft architecturally and stuff on the computer now. But I think it takes away what drew me to the architecture to begin with, which was literally like drafting with a pencil by hand. Some of that you can't replace with, you know, technology. But everyone's different, you know. Some people are amazed that we draw the show by hand. They think it's ridiculous. But I wouldn't have it any other way. You know, that's how we do it. And these guys and myself were all really quick at drafting. And you could, you know, the old, what is it, John Henry, the guy that died of the steel driving man with the, you know, the story, the classic American.
John Henry with the steel driving man.
Right. He was like, you know, he raced the machine, said, I could beat the machine. I do it, and he died doing it. But the fact is, you know, we, I don't know, that's what we know how to do best and quickest. So if you put me alongside someone that did it on the computer, I think I could probably do it quicker than them. But if I started learning and learned how to do it on computer, I probably would get quicker, you know. But it's a comfort zone for us. I like drawing by hand, so that's the way the show's done, you know.
In general, would you say that you have changed as a designer over the last couple decades?
Well, I think we all evolve, right? I think you have to. You know, have I changed in terms of my design approach or my design philosophy? Probably not. No, but, you know, I definitely hope I have grown, you know, from being exposed to so many other different, you know, 3 other different designers. That sometimes I really have to bite my cheek and be like, I wouldn't do it this way. But I sometimes learn that way. You know, don't want to admit it, but I do. Sometimes I learn something different from the way they want to do it. And then sometimes I want to say, I told you so. But isn't that normal? Like, that's part of the process. That's part of learning. That's part of being a better designer. I'm constantly, you know, looking at stuff. I sometimes joke around. Keith's stuff is always so sleek and modern, and I don't care for that style necessarily. I love the old-fashioned. I love, just like Leo, the rivets and the steel work and the old architecture, but that doesn't make it better than one or the other. You know, it doesn't make it any better.
Could you describe your style? Would you say you have a signature style, or is it just very varied?
Well, I guess with SNL, it is pretty varied because you're forced to do other stuff. Sometimes I feel out of my element when we're asked to do certain style or certain things. But I just, I hope that I can learn from that and try it, you know. There were a few times Keith forced me to do a few things that, not forced me so much as I was like, this is his, why am I doing this modern looking, we did like some kind of a video game thing. It was all like blah, plain, very, you know, simple lines. And I thought, this is boring. But in the end, it was an interesting set. And I thought, well, maybe I learned something from that, you know. So, You never know. I think you have to be open to that, especially when you're a designer, especially when you're in this business. You have to be open to learning from when you don't expect to learn. Where, you know, who never thought I would be designing something? I don't want to design modern scenery, but I needed to, so I did it. And I thought, oh, that's not bad. Not bad.
If you picked a like a period of, you know, historical period that you would love more than anything, that you would get a script that says go Victorian or Art
Oh,
Deco,
yeah,
what would
well,
be your favorite period?
I'm a big Prohibition fan. Right? That whole period was like really fascinating to me. But, you know, with the show, it's not the same as taking on something like a musical. It's sometimes you just get away with using black and white for that, or using, you know, wardrobe. Sometimes it's not all us, you know. Some architecture is timeless. It's not architecture isn't always pinned to a period, you know. I mean, some is, don't get me wrong, but you know, the later you explore something like architecture, you know, the more options it could be influenced by all the other possible styles. So, you know, to look at architecture today, you know, you're going to find influences from all different styles, I think. That's what's always so hard about when people say, what kind of house is that? I say, I don't know, it's a house. It's, you know, even this house, like I love my house, but it's like, I don't really know what it is exactly. You know, I can't really say that it's considered a bungalow, but I can't say it's, you know. And I think that's when it comes to style, it's very hard to pinpoint when you ask what style. Geez, I don't know. If I knew, then I would be pigeonholed in one style, wouldn't I? As a designer, shouldn't you want to know about other types of designs? Even when I look at an artist that I should know about, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I don't know about this artist and their work. They've been around forever. And so the more you learn and the more you're willing to hyphenate from a certain style, the better, I think, the more knowledgeable you are as a designer. I kind of think if you're a style, if you have a style as a designer, I don't know if it's considered a style. I think you're repeating yourself. But that's just a philosophy, you know. It's the same. So people are recognizing it as something, but is it your style or are you repeating something? That's why they see it as a style. I don't know, you know. Don't need to answer that question. It's one of those rhetorical ones.
I know that they kind of threw you to the wolves when you first like started at SNL, and like you'll figure it out kind of. But would you say you've in your whole career have had a mentor or someone that took you under their wing, whether it was about architecture, design, or even just the business? Like, would you say there was anyone who stands out to you as a mentor?
Well, I think that's why there's something really wonderful about the team. They've all had an influence on me. There's no question. I like to think that maybe I have had a little influence on them too. But I don't know. And I think that's, you know, all, yeah, Eugene has certainly had influence on me. Leo has and Keith have. They all have in some ways. I don't know that I could pinpoint exactly what way, but yes, they've all had a tremendous impact on me. How could they not, you know? When I see how they would do something, I might not have known. When I first started, I didn't know how I would necessarily design ABC. But as you watch them do it and become better at it, you become better at it. And hopefully you can do any ship, any restaurant, any boat, any, you know, more and more and more as you watch and observe. So.
Is there something that you have in your mind now today that would be a dream project that you want to achieve next 5, 10, 20 years?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of them. I don't know if I can disclose any of them because then it jinxes you.
Well, we signed NDAs.
I almost brought some of those up. I have a number of models in the basement. I would love to do a musical. I would love to. God, yeah, there's always a project I'd love to do. There's a national puppetry conference every summer that I kick myself every year for not joining. But, you know, it's this kind of, been around for years up at the Eugene O'Neill in Connecticut.
You showed me that puppet video. That was, I remember, the giant puppets.
Oh, yeah. No, that was Eugene, was it?
That was Eugene.
Yeah,
that was. Well, there you go.
But there's, yeah, I have seen those massive elephant and the massive puppets going to Sea Diver or something. Did he show you those?
Yes.
No, up at the Eugene O'Neill, there's this funny little group of people that meet every year, and you can take a course and you can basically apply and get in. But they do. You all contribute to a production, and when you join the first year, you're a contributor. But as you come back every year, you step up and can eventually even present your project, and then the team of people that come to the camp that year all work towards your project. There are multiple projects and multiple levels, but that always interested me. Musical theater always interests me, but sometimes I feel like I'm open to trying something completely different.
Or what about, I mean, do you still identify as an architect? Do you still want to
Sure.
build?
Sometimes my brother-in-law is an architect. I always keep that in my back pocket. Could I go back and be an architect? I think I could. Would the community accept me, or would I be accepted in a firm somewhere? Well, if it's my brother-in-law, maybe I would. I don't know. Might be a shoe-in. Who knows? But yeah, part of me feels like I'd really like to. I always kind of criticize, and I shouldn't, but people for not, thinking outside of their box. Like, to me, I could see walking away from all of this and exploring something different. I would love to travel. There's a lot of things. And as you get older, you always question these things. I mean, I look at Leo, I have a tremendous amount of respect for Leo. Here's a guy who's done every single SNL since the day it started. But then sometimes I think, oh my God, how could you do that? So that's why there's always this kind of dichotomy, or whatever you want to call it, this challenge of follow your instincts, explore other things. Stick with what you know, but maybe you can still do it without, it doesn't always have to be so linear or so connected. He does a lot of painting and drawing now that he said he always wanted to do more of. Keith does a ton of work out in LA and in California. Eugene does so much work, and sometimes I kind of question Eugene all the time. He says, I didn't get to sail at all this summer. Well, go sail. That's what you like to do. Take the time to do it. So sometimes if I'm influenced by them, it's because sometimes I think maybe they're working too hard. But then I kick myself and think, well, maybe I'm not working hard enough. I don't know. But it's certainly, the satisfaction's still there, and as we get older, we all kind of change and go through changes. So I don't know. I wish I had a better answer for that, but I think I'd like to, as long as I'm still interested and still excited about what I do, then it doesn't really matter what it is. As long as it's interesting and exciting to me. It could be anything, So, but this is just what I've developed and what I feel that I'm better at. So it's a comfort zone.
For sure.
When you explore the other zones that are not so comfortable, sometimes you'll learn a lot more, but it's hard to go there. So,
another tough question. You're not going to be able to pick, but if you had to name your proudest career achievement to date, what would it be? A set, or what would it be?
It's tough. I don't know. I guess proudest career achievement is my, even though I pale in comparison to my three colleagues, is the longevity of being able to stay with the show. Because as much as I say it's exciting and interesting, it gets tough, and you question it all the time. But I think when I talk to friends who work for, in more corporate environments, or work in, over at CBS and affiliate relations, my buddy, or so one of them was studio, head of one of the studios in NBC, they also have moments of frustration and lack of fulfillment, and then they have good times too. And I think, it's easy to quit, but having the longevity at that show is not typical. There's not, there are some people, but in my department it is probably unique to most of the departments.
How do the four of you not kill each other on a weekly basis? How does that dynamic work?
I don't know. There's a lot of times we're at each other's, and there's a lot of times when we're not. But I think it has to do with the schedule. It has to do with the break. It has to do with, It's always funny. I don't think people even realize, but we literally walk out there at the end of the season, May 19th this year was the last show. I may not even talk to Keith, Eugene, or Leo for until September. Now, maybe that's kind of bad, but I mean, and there's the occasional communication. Don't get me wrong. There's an email here or there, a text occasionally if it's something related to work, but most summers pass and it's like school. We come back and it's just like, hey, how was your summer? Great. All right. What did they pick this week? It's just like riding a bike. You just get back on, you do it again. And maybe that's why we're there so long, because of the kind of program to just go in and do that part. But I also long to make changes and revisions and improvements on the way we do it in our department. But it's very hard to do. I think it's hard everywhere, but I don't know if that answers what you're digging for. But
Well, I know you blow off steam. You go up on the rooftop sometimes. You have ways of dealing with stress that's not at each other.
Sure. I think we all develop these things. I mean, you have to, and I think the people that don't kind of can slip off the deep end pretty quick. But you have to develop outlets for getting through the harder parts. It's life, isn't it? I mean, kidding me? You think it's all a picnic this summer? There's all kinds of, there's always challenges in life, even personal and family and things with, there's things go on all the time that's why I attribute SNL to, your stick-to-itiveness, if you can call it that, your toughness. You just have to kind of be tough and push through, because there are plenty of shows, believe me, I walked out of the shop many times, especially early on. So get out of it, fuck this. And grab my stuff and walk out, and then an hour later, cool off, come back. Everyone say, "Hey, everything okay?" I said, "No, but it's going to have to be, it's going to be fine, and then there are weeks that I'm just elated and it's great. And it's part of life, I think. And to have be graced with such a job. What other TV shows even on this long? I mean, obviously there's a few news programs stuff, but shows where you could be creative and create this much scenery every week and be creative this much is a gift. I mean, I'm lucky to have that. So.
Is there anything you wish you would have known about this SNL environment in general when you first fought to become a page?
God, probably not, because if I did know, I might not be so enthusiastic. But there is an incredible amount of like this smoke and mirrors, that there's a real exciting and amazing surface look to the show. But when you dig in and see what it takes to do the show, it's overwhelming. And sometimes it's like that human potential thing where you think like, God, how could it be achieved? But if you just put your nose to the grindstone, here I sit 25 years later still at NBC, and I don't know that if you asked me 25 years ago that I would ever say I'd still be at NBC, or even at SNL, nonetheless. Mm-hmm. So it is an institution, and I think that's why it's so inspirational to see so many people. When I started, it was Adam Sandler, Mike Myers. Those people are long. Phil Hartman. I can't even. He was the sweetest man I ever met. I'll never forget him asking me when I was at the page desk. What do you do? I thought, really? What do I do? Yeah, it's amazing that you would extend yourself and be interested and these people are just, there's so many people over those years, that Davey Wilson, the original director, and his son, who I'm so close with, and I just have an incredible affection for the people that's lives have crossed paths at SNL, and you still come back and there's still the same four designers there. I don't know about the rest, but so that's my contribution, I guess.
You're part of the institution.
Yeah, I'll say.
More generally, if someone was just thinking about, like, say you have a nephew that is thinking about becoming a production designer for television, not necessarily SNL, but is there any advice you would give them?
Skills? Don't do it. Absolutely, get out while you can. No, I think, that's why it's great too. I've brought many of my nephews and nieces around to show them around the studio, and I would just tell them, I think it's important to follow your instincts. I think that's what's landed me where I am. You follow your instincts and hope that they'll lead you to where you will do best, contribute the most. Because, yeah, that's the best I can say. And not be, it's important not to be distracted, by the flash or the excitement or people always say, oh, the first thing people always ask me is, oh, you get to meet all these celebrities, you get to meet. No, we don't really. Yes, we do. Some of the cast we get to know over time. Sometimes the environment is such that you get to have a wonderful little moment to meet someone. But again, I know I do what I do because I love it. I don't do it. There's not there's not a personal relationship with all these people that come and go throughout the years on the show. The relationship is maybe sadly so, but truthfully so. The relationship is with your work and with what you have to, contribute, and what you hopefully have to, your craft. And it's, not everyone has that opportunity, so. And that's why I look up to those guys too. Look at all they've done, double what I've done with their hands, hands down, double or triple the amount of work I put in. So the fact that they've done it that long blows me away. But you just keep plugging along every year, and try to make sure there's other things in your life besides that, which is very important. And that's probably the advice I would give to, nieces or nephews or anyone interested. Mm-hmm. Make sure there's as many things as you could have in your life to interest you, and keep an open mind, because you don't want to pass up another opportunity that may come along. You want to explore as many opportunities as you can, and many facets of yourself that you can. I guess.
Now, as impressive as it is that you do what you do in such a short time, do you ever feel like your talents are not adequately showcased in a setting like SNL because you don't have the time to?
Well, again, showcased is a big word. That's why we're behind the scenes. We're not there to be, at least I'm not there to be showcased. I'm there to support. That's why the team, as much as we have a dysfunctional team sometimes, and a crazy bunch of people, and a bunch of, eccentricities that we all display, we're part of a team that does a project that, that's why some of the theater stuff is really magical when it works and happens. It's because a team got together and everybody did their part, and it magically works. And it's more often than not, it doesn't work. But in this case, those moments when it does work are exhilarating, and I think not everyone can experience that. But listen, we have bad seasons, we have bad shows, we have bad sketches, but we have really good ones too. So no way to really measure it,
Yeah.
I guess.
We've one last question. We ask everyone, so
Uh-oh.
I hate this question, but you'll hate it more.
What's your favorite word?
How would you like to be remembered?
How would I like to be remembered?
Artistically, professionally, personally, however you want to answer that.
Yeah. Geez, I don't know. I guess, I don't know. Generous. I'd like to be considered a generous person. And that crosses the boundary from everywhere, from personally to artistically to creatively to, I don't know. I guess generosity is important. It's, you should give of yourself as much as you can, because it perpetuates your contribution. It perpetuates your yourself as a spiritual being, as an individual. You just have to hope that you extend on beyond when you're gone, through whatever you gave to everybody else. We're all made up of, in my opinion, our experiences and individuals and the people that our paths cross with and that we work with and that we live with and that we are born with, and family and friends. And if you think that it ends when you're gone, then it doesn't give you much to care about, But if you can give to others and they can take something and make something of it, then that's, in my opinion, how I would like to be. Not so much remembered as be a piece of everybody that my path crossed with. Does that count?
Absolutely. That's a very generous statement, and I know that I think that your colleagues would consider you that already. So anyway, thank you so much for sitting with us and
Sure.
enduring this for so
Sure.
long.
I hope I didn't put everyone to sleep.
Never.